Samuel sat relaxed in the armchair and watched TV. For 4 years, he had been working as a surgeon in a small district hospital. He was given a tiny flat on the ground floor of a wooden house, but with water and radiators, the salary was nothing. And the prices were nothing. He bought groceries because the patients, most of whom were from villages, considered it their duty to thank the surgeon who had cut out their appendix or removed an ingrown toenail with groceries. Here, everything was not like in the big city, and bribes were given mostly with natural products, and gratitude with them too, and he didn't refuse. People here are kind, sincere. Refuse. You'll be offended to death. Once Samuel worked in a good clinic in a big city. Young surgeon had great hopes, but, as it turned out, it wasn't enough for a good life, as the head doctor told him. It wasn't enough, as the head doctor told him, when he asked him to quit. They don't need people without a tribe. All because Samuel had the indiscretion to fall in love with the daughter of the head doctor. True, at the time they started dating, he didn't know it. After her father came early in the morning to his house, and God Oval pulled his daughter out of his bed. True, at that time, the daughter was already 25, but it didn't stop the father. To tell the truth, Samuel couldn't even think how it would end. He thought that such a thing was left far away in the past. Now he just came to work, and he was immediately called to the chief to write a letter of resignation. He was amazed. Samuel looked at the chief and sat down to write the statement. He held out a piece of paper and asked, "Well, now, can I find out what this is all about? I did nothing wrong. We wanted to get married ourselves." The chief doctor laughed afterward. "No, who needs you without a family and without a tribe? Who are you anyway?" He had come such a long way to become a man, which not everyone can pass. And he really was from such a family, where there was never an extra piece of bread, but it was all in the past. He gave the head doctor in the jaw and did not look how he landed and left the office, and then realized that the head doctor did not forgive him. Sam wandered for 2 months, but everyone averted his eyes and no one took him to work, even those who used to try to lure him to them. So when Samuel was offered to work in the zone, at the women's hospital, he had no choice these 3 years. He will never forget Samuel has seen a lot in life and heard a lot, but faced with reality, he just fell into a stupor. Women are the most evil creatures in earth is incomprehensible because how they behaved on the zone. They learned or just came out, all the underlying. They constantly fought among themselves, arranged dark beatings a lot. And between all this, managed to get pregnant, poisoned, and cut. What only patients he has not had any of the first one he would never forget. She was brought in after a fight. They weren't just fighting, but with homemade shivs. He barely saved her, and while she was unconscious, he told the nurse, who was also a prisoner. If he'd met one in ordinary life, he'd have thought she was an angel. Then she swindled some rich guy. He signed everything over to her, and she killed him. And then she's the first one to start all the fights, push bubbles together, and then admire her. She's a rotten soul. Everyone already knows she needs to be looked after. Samuel was in complete shock. He sat next to her all night because one wound was really bothering him. He thought that if she survived, she would have to always wear a closed dress unless she could find the money for plastic surgery. In the morning, she was taken to the central hospital, and the convoy went with her. He turned round to make himself comfortable. Today he was on duty. It was very rare for someone to be brought in at night. Usually conscious citizens waited until morning and then called an ambulance. He thought he had even dozed off a little, but he was woken up by the nasty sound of a siren. Samuel got up and looked out of the window. The ambulance literally flew into the hospital courtyard, something serious. But since the obstetrics department was on the ground floor, he sat down to give birth again. Probably someone needed help, but if he needed it, he would be called. He grinned to himself. Yes, a calm and measured life is relaxing. The only thing left for a man is to get married and then grow a potbelly and buy a second-hand foreign car. Stop, he has a car, and a very nice one. He bought it when he first started working in a big city. There were quick footsteps along the corridor. They were getting closer, and the door swung open behind him. Samuel, more like a man. There he was, brought in after a road accident. Lenora rounded her eyes. She had just graduated from medical school 3 months ago, so she often rounded her eyes. They ran down the corridor. Lenora couldn't shut up for a second out of shock. That the car is very cool. If it was a little simpler, the man would have died. But it seems from it remained only shoes like my 3 salaries and Percy on the finger, Lena on business. Oh, Samuel, in general, the ambulance said, not alive. Samuel ran into the examination room. There was already a doctor from the maternity ward and 2 more nurses, making a quick inspection ordered to prepare the operating room and the patient doctor. His colleague asked Samuel, "Are you sure of one thing when he dies before? And if on the operating table you propose to leave it, the operation lasted 4 hours, or..." Everyone who was in the hospital helped Samuel. Samuel smiled, but as you can see, his colleague shook his head and then extended his hand. I took off my hat. I had never seen such a thing. Although I have been in medicine for many years, Samuel did not leave the patient for almost 2 days, and when he woke up, exhaled. He immediately rounded her eyes. "Lenora, what's going on here?" The nurses rushed to tell him that the man he was picking up in pieces had asked to call somewhere. "Oh, Samuel, what's going on here?" So many people, Dr. Stolicnaya's guards, all at once in the ward, new furniture and equipment. The chief doctor is pale. They say that this uncle is some kind of real oligarch. Samuel approached the ward. The guard looked at his badge and immediately opened the door. Samuel only shook his head like a president. "Honestly, hello? How are you feeling?" The patient looked at him and smiled. "I realize you're the skullcap who brought me back from the other side of the world. But don't exaggerate. If your time had come, no one would have been able to bring you back. So you were destined to live, and my merit is not so great. Oh no, I've heard stories about you being a wizard. Thank you. I have too many plans, so I owe you. Oh, come on. It's just my job." While Samuel was looking at the stitches and reading the chart with the analyses, the man spoke softly. "If everyone did their job as well as you do, there wouldn't be any problems. I'm the president of a huge company. Do you know how much money I have? I don't know. I pay so much money to everyone around me, and at any moment my wheel could fall off. Why people don't realize I'm going to charge them is because they always hope I can get away with it. I'll live or die, but it's definitely too early for you to die." He looked up. The patient was about 45, maybe a little over, with shrewd eyes, a slight smirk. And this, despite the fact that he was in pain now. It just couldn't be painless. "But if you say so, we'll live. My name, by the way, is Robert Andreevich. But just Robert to you, and I'm Samuel. As you realize, our hospital, which is on full state support, doesn't have half of the medicines you could use, doctor. It's not a question at all." He waved his hand, and immediately a man, whom Samuel had never noticed before, appeared nearby. A man in a white coat, from which Samuel concluded that he was a doctor from the capital. In his hands he held a weighty suitcase and held out his hand to Kenneth. "Look, I think I have everything I need. I sketched a scheme, but without your consent, Robert Andreevich refuses to be treated with such drugs." Music. 3 weeks later, Robert was to be transferred to the capital. He was sitting on the bed, but he could get up, but not for more than 5 minutes. For 5 minutes, Samuel, I called. As soon as I learned something, they somehow got close to this patient. Despite his money, Robert turned out to be a man of peace. I'll be grateful. Here are very wonderful people, but I want a real job. I won't forget. And in general, I hope we won't lose each other. Robert didn't cheat. After a month, Samuel said goodbye to everyone and moved towards Washington, where a very chocolate position was waiting for him. He talked on the phone with the head doctor, and he said that he was paid. "We have a very good job, but we also work. We work on our conscience. People come to us from all over America. So get ready." He was ready to remember 6 months passed, and he managed to see Robert only twice. The first time they just walked and talked because Robert was still on injections. The second time they got drunk and had a very heart-to-heart chat. One evening, Samuel got a phone call. He smiled. This was the tune he had picked out together when he and Robert were destroying his stock in the bar. I wanted to laugh because it was the music from Fleet of the Bumblebee. None of them could remember why she was here, but if they chose her, it was the right thing to do. Samuel, mate, hi. If you're a freen, something's wrong. You're too smart for me. Robert laughed. I'm in love. Well, almost in love. There are pitfalls, of course, but I'm getting married, despite my age. Robert had never been married or had children. He was worried about the latter and even thought of asking. Katerina is pregnant, and you know what that means to me, but I congratulate you. So, the wedding is in a month. You're the guest of honor. I'll send you an invitation. It was the first time Samuel had seen such a gathering of rich people. He bumped into Robert for only a few minutes, and he said that before the wedding he would introduce him to his fiancée. Samuel, I need your opinion, and in general. Pay attention. Is everything okay? Has everything suddenly gone bad? She's not saying anything? Good. Go now. About 20 minutes later, Robert approached Samuel. Please love and pity my Kate. In front of Samuel stood a delicate creature. Despite the fact that the woman was over 30, she looked like an angel, and then Samuel was like an electric shock. He handed someone a glass and stepped towards the bride. He quickly took her hand and pulled off the collar of her dress. The woman shrieked. Robert was indignant. What do you allow yourself? Under the collar was a scar so visible, so ugly. It was obvious that someone had already worked on it, but it was still very visible. Robert, I'm afraid to disappoint you, but your fiancée's name is not Katerina. Her name is Sophia. The woman looked at him with eyes full of horror. And stepped back, but there was a guard standing there. The most interesting thing is that, she can't have children. Absolutely never after the stabbing in prison, where she was serving time for the very rich husband you were going to become. Robert sat down next to Samuel on the steps of the restaurant. Samuel turned to him. You're like, yes, it's okay. It's a shame that I fell in love with a non-existent child. Thank you, Samuel. I don't know why I was such a loser, always checking everyone. Come on, let's have a drink. The tables are set. Come on. Robert waved his hand and hugged his friend. I'll get married anyway. I'll go to the city where you worked and marry Lenora. And she made eyes at me. And she'll give birth to 3 sons and a cute daughter. Samuel laughed. 4 sons, but it doesn't matter. The main thing is that she gave birth. If you like the story, I hope you'll support it with a thumbs up. Thank you, and have a nice day.